A guard of honour awaited President Murmu in Parliament lawns, followed by drum rolls. Then a senior marshal with the Sengol escorted her inside the Parliament building for the first presidential address since Prime Minister Modi-led NDA formed the government for the third time. In her 1 hour, 10 minutes address, President Murmu highlighted the achievements of the previous government and called the Lok Sabha polls an election of trust in policy, intention and dedication. She said that the upcoming budget will be futuristic and will facilitate fast-tracked reforms. She also addressed the recent irregularities seen in various competitive exams. She said that the government will investigate the paper leaks, also mentioning that the government was continuously working for lasting peace in the northeast. However, there was no mention of the Manipur ethnic clashes. President Murmu also called the emergency of 1975 as the biggest and darkest chapter or a direct attack on the constitution.
ये बजट सरकार की दूरगामी नीतियों और फ्यूचरिस्टिक विजन का एक प्रभावी दस्तावेज होगा। इस बजट में बड़े आर्थिक और सामाजिक निर्णयों के साथ ही अनेक ऐतिहासिक कदम भी देखने को मिलेंगे। भारत के तेज विकास की जन आकांक्षाओं का पूरा करने के लिए रिफॉर्म्स की गति अब और तेज की जाएगी। हाल ही में कुछ परीक्षाओं में हुई पेपर लीक की घटनाओं की निष्पक्ष जांच और दोषियों को कड़ी से कड़ी सजा दिलवाने के लिए मेरी सरकार प्रतिबद्ध है। हमारे इससे पहले भी हमने देखा है कि कई राज्यों में पेपर लीक की घटनाएं होती रही है। इस पर दलीय राजनीति से ऊपर उठकर देशव्यापी ठोस उपाय करने की जरूरत है। 25 जून 1975 को लागू हुआ आपातकाल संविधान पर सीधे हमले का सबसे बड़ा और काला अध्याय था। तो पूरे देश में हाहाकार मच गया था, लेकिन ऐसी असंवैधानिक ताकतों पर देश ने विजय प्राप्त करके दिखाया, क्योंकि भारत के मूल में गणतंत्र की परंपराएं रही है।
राष्ट्रपति जी सरकारी भाषण दे दिए तो नॉर्मल है, सरकार के ही सारे मुद्दे वो लोग आगे बढ़ाने का कोशिश में होंगे। लेकिन इस समय 49 साल के बाद ये जो इमरजेंसी के बाद जिक्र किया, मेरे ख्याल में कोई लॉजिक नहीं था उस विषय पे। मणिपुर इस शब्द तो ना प्रधानमंत्री के मुंह से निकला ना राष्ट्रपति जी से। ये बड़ी जरूरी है कि इस किस्म के विषय चीन के सीमा से में क्या हो रहा है, बहुत बड़े विषय हमारे देश में है जो हम उठाना चाहते हैं हमारे देश में।
And joining us now to take this forward is Vineet Agarwal, Managing Director of Transport Corporation of India, also former President of ASSOCHAM. Also with us is A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director at the Business Standard. Mr. Bhattacharya, let me begin with you. The President said that my government is committed to taking major economic and social decisions. Many historic steps will also be seen in the budget and the pace of reforms will be accelerated. What do you think is left from the NDA 2.0 agenda that we are going to see in the next 100 days or possibly in the budget?
Well, I think the President has noted that the budget will bring about or introduce historic steps. And I think when she talks about historic steps, she is probably referring to the kind of initiatives that would be taken with regard to the way the center will be collaborating with the states in inviting investments and including foreign investments. Because the President does expand on this idea of historic steps by saying that there is the need for a competitive, cooperative federalism by which the states' help will be sought to get more foreign investment. Another area, or what I would call will be very reformist, is if the budget advances the roadmap for fiscal consolidation, in the sense that with the help of the RBI's special money that surplus transfer, the government can probably present a fiscal deficit number which would be much lower than what was presented in the interim budget of 5.1%. Now, it's possible that the government may actually lay down a roadmap, a new roadmap for a more robust and more forward-looking fiscal consolidation roadmap. So these are and of course the budget's focus on manufacturing, services, and agriculture, all three areas which need urgent steps in terms of creating jobs, terms of addressing rural distress. So these are all indications from the president's address, which probably will get some sort of a reference or will be looked at in the budget that will be presented by the finance minister next month.
Right. I think that is a very important point because the president did speak about the importance of competitive cooperative federalism and how the government wants to take the states on board in terms of driving more FDI inflows into India. Mr. Agarwal, if I were to get you in at this stage, the president also referred to continuous efforts being made to reduce the cost of logistics in the country. Now, this is a very important point for attracting manufacturing and getting companies to invest in India, and also seamless movement of goods and seamless regulations across the country. What would be the key ask here, which would probably make logistics far more easier in India?
Parikshit, I think you missed out one specific point there, which is competitiveness. Not just attracting international companies in India, but also making Indian companies competitive. And logistics is clearly one of the main reasons why we've seen success in countries like China, in Germany, and so on. Today, 60 to 65% of freight traffic actually moves by road, which is the most expensive and which has the highest amount of carbon emission. If we can move to rail or even coastal shipping, which is just 6% of the overall traffic in India versus about 20% in places like China, it can make a dramatic impact, not just on cost, but how the country is going to move towards this green ambition. So the idea around building the railway corridors for energy, for cement, for minerals, and so on and so forth, via a rail network will be the most important thing, which is essentially meaning that cargo needs to start moving through a multimodal network. And this has to be seamless. It cannot be so, because when you're moving through rail, there will be a first mile and a last mile, which will happen by road or even by the other modes. So, which would mean that the seamless movement between the modes of transport has to be there. It also means that things have to be digitized as much as possible, because if there's documentation, there's insurance, and so on and so forth, will ensure that the cargo is just not just seamless, but also most efficiently moved. Hence, the key ask would be invest in infrastructure, as much as infrastructure as possible for multimodal logistics, so that this we are able to bring down the cost quite fast.
Right. Let me also pursue the point of competitive cooperative federalism and healthy competition among states with Mr. Bhattacharya. Mr. Bhattacharya, this was an important aspect of the president's speech that you highlighted. How is this going to be brought about? We do know that the Ministry of Commerce and the DPIIT is conducting a study, an ease of doing business study, to rate different states on parameters as to how they are performing, how they are in terms of attracting investment. But that is one standard. What can be actually done on pen and paper in terms of implementation so that you can get the state governments on board, get their help in attracting more investments? Do you think there is somewhere a blueprint within the government ready on that?
Well, I have no specific information whether the government has any blueprint or not, but certainly from the various statements made by the new government's leaders, and particularly by the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, even before the elections were completed, he talked about how he needs the states to become more active partners in inviting foreign investment into the country. Now, I think it is important to note that a foreign investor does not invest in a country called India, but actually he's investing in different states. There are 28 to 29 states in this country which are actually attracting investments and actual locations of projects. So therefore, if the GST Council is an excellent example of where the states and the center are actually collaborating in deciding to what kind of tax rates can be levied on goods and services. Now, something similar can be thought of in which the states and the center actually get together and decide on how to look at their various state government's policies and the central's taxation and other ease of doing business policies and make it more attractive so that all the states are actually beneficiaries of this exercise. So when you're talking about competitive and cooperative federalism, you are actually talking about a kind of a GST council kind of a structure where the center and the states get together and make a joint pitch for investments into different states depending on their locational as well as specific advantages. But going beyond Parikshit, what I would like to add is there is something that is needed in terms of ease of doing business apart from logistics, which is the reform of judicial processes. And I think this is part of the BJP's agenda, and I do expect that the union budget we presented in the last week of July would outline what kind of judicial reforms can be looked at, which will expedite the way various cases are being settled, and industry and trade will be particularly benefited by such easy and trouble-free resolution of cases.
Right. That's an important point. And let me pursue that with Vineet. Vineet, when it comes to ease of doing business, there is a Jan Vishwas 2.0 which is being discussed within the government right now. They hope to have a draft bill ready by the end of the 100 days, first 100 days of the government. Now, that will deal with decriminalizing certain unnecessary penal provisions. But in terms of judicial reforms, in terms of ease of doing business reforms, would there be one or two key asks that you would have?
Yes, certainly. I think not just the fact that you can open a company very fast. I think the idea to close companies fast enough should also be one of the very important areas of focus, because today decriminalization is certainly a very, very important aspect because it discourages risk-taking. Today, if we are able to incentivize risk-taking through the mode of startups and look at failure as one of the ways to learn and grow out of it. So closing down companies will be very important. Certain amount of areas around GST standardization, I think that's a very important thing. It's very cumbersome for a national company, for example, even our logistics company, which is present in all the states, to have multiple GST numbers and do filing of returns every quarter. It actually leads to more losses because there is a element of high degree of effort and error that happens, and also discourages smaller companies to be part of the GST regime. So that would be the third thing. Incentivizing certain amount of taxation for new manufacturing, I think that will be very critical to attract SMEs and MSMEs. When we look at larger incentives like PLI, etc., I think we have to also look at how the MSMEs will grow, because they are the people who are going to support the larger industries. Today, when we talk about manufacturing for, let's say, phones in India, we know that almost 90% of those components are being imported. How can we create an ecosystem where those MSMEs are actually being present in India and growing in India to contribute to the larger schemes?
All right. My final set of questions, if I can take quick closing remarks from both our guests. Mr. Bhattacharya, now, when it comes to driving consumption, there has been some talk in quarters about giving tax relief to the common man. The government has been reducing expectations on that front. But do you expect some sort of relief in the new tax regime in order to incentivize more people entering there and maybe also increase the consumption potential? Do you see measures like that in the budget?
Well, I think the government has an unfulfilled agenda on direct tax reforms for individuals, wherein there is an option for the new scheme and the old scheme, and there is need for making the new scheme more attractive. Already some steps were taken in the last couple of years, and I think that agenda is still not completed. So therefore, you will see some further tweaks and further reforms and easing of the tax rates for those individuals who opt for the new scheme. Now, already there is a differential rate between the two, and my sense is that more reforms are likely to be announced in the budget on the new direct tax schemes for individuals.
Right. My quick final question to Vineet. Very briefly, the president also spoke about increasing investments in green industries, leading to more green jobs. For the logistics sector and for, kickstarting the next phase of growth in the EV ecosystem, having EV-ready infrastructure, what would be some of the key expectations?
The incentivization of not just EV, but even LNG, for example, at the transportation level will help in moving a lot of traffic towards green logistics as well. We have to reduce carbon emission. I think that's an understood and important fact. The ecosystem around even battery management, battery technology, a lot of it is also imported. I think some incentivization there, some schemes there would also for sure help. Beyond that, I think we have to keep looking at alternative energies because it's not just going to be EV that's going to save the day. It's a transitional phase where we will move from hubs. In hub to hub will be probably CNG, LNG, and ICE engines for some time, and the spokes will be more EV and CNG, LNG. And maybe in 7 to 10 years from now, hydrogen as a fuel would start coming in. So it has to be looked at holistically and not just individually at just EVs.
Right. Thank you very much, Vineet, and also Mr. Bhattacharya for joining us. But when we return, we're taking a short break at this point, but we will be getting you a special conversation with former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, and we will speak to him about jobs, youth, farmers and women, and what we can expect from the budget and NDA 3.0 on that.